Mistakes are a fact of life. It is the response to the error that counts. Nikki Giovanni. Ever since he was a young child, Soichiro Honda was obsessed with cars. I know the feeling. Honda grew up in rural Japan, where he learned about making bicycle and engine parts in his father's blacksmith shop. Honda wasn't much of a student, never making it past elementary school. He spent almost all of his time tinkering with spare parts and trying to build things in his father's workshop. In 1922, when he was just 15, Honda left home by himself to take a job at Art Shokai, one of Tokyo's first auto repair shops. Lacking formal education, Honda had to start off sweeping floors, but over the next few years, he developed a reputation as a serious and creative worker. One of the ways he proved himself was helping design one of the first racing cars made in Japan, which was named, I'm not making this up, the Curtiss. After a few years, Honda was put in charge of a new branch of Art Shokai in the city of Hamamatsu. Honda's branch did very well, and when he felt he finally earned his boss's respect, Honda decided to pitch them on an idea that had been brewing in his head. Drawing on his experiences in his father's blacksmith shop and working on the Curtiss, Honda approached his bosses with a new way to design car pistons. Their feedback was negative. They told him his idea wouldn't work and refused to support him. Honda was sure he was on to something, so he quit his job and launched his own company, Tokai Seiki, to produce the pistons. He sunk everything he had into his company, even going so far as to pawn his wife's jewelry. He spent nights sleeping in his workshop until finally he felt the pistons were ready. He packed 30,000 of them into several trucks and traveled to Tokyo, where he presented them to a buyer at a new auto company called Toyota. The buyer looked over the pistons and then delivered some bad news. Honda's design was substandard. After reviewing the pistons, Toyota decided that only 3 out of the entire batch were up to standard. They refused the shipment. Honda was in an extremely tough spot. He'd sunk all his money into making his own pistons, and they'd just been declared worthless. Most people in his situation would have cut their losses and closed up shop. Not Honda. Instead of walking away, he decided to take a hard look at what had gone wrong. If his pistons were being declared DOA, he was going to perform his own autopsy on them before he gave up his dream. When Honda reviewed his design, he was able to identify where he'd screwed up. He relied too heavily on his first-hand experience in his father's shop and later at Art Shokai. He hadn't spent enough time actually studying the engineering theory behind his design. Passion wouldn't be enough. He'd need education too. Instead of shutting his company down, Honda committed himself to becoming more educated about both design and manufacturing. He spent the next several years traveling around Japan, taking engineering classes and visiting steel factories, trying to soak up as much new information as he could. After years of study and observation, Honda felt ready to go back to the drawing board. This time he was able to overcome the design and manufacturing issues that had tripped him up and produced a batch of working pistons. It won him a new contract with Toyota. Honda's difficult times weren't over, though. In 1944, toward the end of World War II, one of his piston factories was destroyed in an American bombing raid. Then only a year later, a massive earthquake destroyed another of his factories. Having 2 factories destroyed in 2 years would have been the final straw for most people. Even the most hardened hustler might not be able to get back up from that. But Honda still refused to stay down. He sold what was left of his company to Toyota for just 450,000 yen. With the proceeds of that sale, he set up a new company, which he called the Honda Technical Research Institute. That company, known as Honda for short, would go on to become one of the most profitable car manufacturers of all time. Honda himself would become internationally known as the Henry Ford of Japan and would be credited as one of the most innovative businessmen of the 20th century. When asked towards the end of his life what had been the most important lesson of his journey, Honda pointed out the moment he delivered the flawed pistons to Toyota. He had failed, but his determination to learn from his failure transformed him into a much more potent entrepreneur. Many people dream of success. To me, success can only be achieved through repeated failure and introspection, Honda said. In fact, success represents 1% of your work, which results only from the 99%, which is called failure. Soichiro Honda's story really connects with me. I know how hard it was to accomplish what he did. A lot of people have great ideas. Only a small percentage of them have the passion and work ethic to actually follow through and put them into motion. Of that select second group, every single one of them will still make a mistake or experience some sort of failure during the struggle to bring that idea to fruition. How that person responds to their failure is going to determine the outcome of their journey. Are they going to let it kill their passion? Is that perceived failure going to make them settle for something less risky, like a 9-to-5 working for someone else? Or will they experience a reaction to that obstacle even more severe? They might become so dejected that they go off the deep end and start drinking or getting high every day. Or they might get so stressed that they find God and they walk away from it all. Those are the reactions that the majority of people, even the most driven, have when they encounter failure. Don't let yourself have that reaction. Approach failures the same way Honda did, as a tool that can help you get things right the next time. We treat failure